There is no smoke without fire, and the toad does not run in the daytime unless something is after it. Something is happening in Ivory Coast. Across social media, the whispers came fast. A voice note, a blurry video, a claim too dangerous to ignore. And it says, the military is on the move. The president has fled. Abidjan is in lockdown. The hashtag Coup in Côte d'Ivoire caught fire. Screenshots flooded timelines. And by the nightfall on May 21st, the streets of Abidjan held their breath. Shops closed early. Rumours outpaced facts. And the people, those who remember 1999, 2002, and 2010, began preparing just in case. But by the morning, the headlines told a different story. Cabinet meetings were held. Official statements dismissed the rumor. State media moved on. And yet, something still doesn't sit right. Because when people start running without being chased, when government addresses crisis, no one confirmed. And when silence replaces transparency, you don't just move on. In African politics, the truth rarely arrives on time. It seeps out slowly, long after the damage is done. And so, while some say it was probably nothing, others are asking the harder question. What were we not supposed to see? What really happened on that night? Why did millions believe a coup was unfolding without a single shot fired? Is this the paranoia of a fragile democracy or the early tremor before something much larger breaks loose? This much is clear. Ivory Coast is on edge. Its political climate is suffocating. Its opposition is being cornered. Its people are restless. And when power plays out in the shadows, rumors become weapons, sharp enough to cut through even the strongest deniers. Welcome to Frontline Africa. In this explosive episode, we pull back the curtain on the whisper campaign that rocked a nation and ask the question no one dares to answer. Was it all just noise or the sound of something breaking? To understand what really happened on the night of May 21st, you have to go back, not to days, but to decades. Because in Ivory Coast, whispers of a coup don't just come from nowhere. They rise from memory. They crawl out of the wounds this country never healed from. In 1999, a military coup ousted President Henry Konan. It was swift, bloodless, but it shattered a nation once seen as most stable in West Africa. 2022, a failed mutiny exploded into civil war. The North fell into rebel hands. The South remained under government control. The line that splitted the country is more than just geography. It's trauma. Then came 2010, the most haunting of all. An election. 2 men, 1 presidency. Alassane Ouattara declared winner. Gbagbo refused to concede. 3,000 people died. Bodies in the street. A once booming economy brought to its knees. Neighbors turning on neighbors in a spiral of fear and revenge. The violence eventually ended, but the fear never left. So when in 2025 a simple voice note said the military is moving, people didn't laugh it off. They remembered. They remembered the silence before the storm, the sudden shutdown of broadcast, the coded language, the tension in the air. Because in Ivory Coast, you don't need to see tanks to know the ground is shifting. This isn't just history. It's lived experience, passed down like folklore, but laced with blood. And here is the truth. Everyone in power today was part of yesterday's chaos. Ouattara, Gbagbo, the generals, the old parties, they've all worn different suits, but played the same game. So when the rumors of coup hit the airwaves, it wasn't just news, it was deja vu. And in a country where the past never sleeps, every whisper sounds like a warning. It began with a whisper, one audio message, grainy, shaky, and anonymous. The military is moving. Something's happening tonight. Within minutes, the message has crossed borders. WhatsApp groups lit up like wildfire. X erupted with hashtags such as Coup in Ivory Coast, Ouattara have fled, Abidjan in lockdown. TikTokers posted shaky videos of trucks in the dark. Telegram channels shared fake images of soldiers outside state buildings. Suddenly, the word coup wasn't just trending, it was believable. Why? Because it felt plausible, too plausible. A fragile political climate, an unpopular government, a rising opposition figure just disqualified from the race. It was the perfect storm, and Côte d'Ivoire fell into it. Phones stopped ringing. Shops in Abidjan shut early. Families tuned in to the state broadcaster, waiting for that airy script freeze, the one that always comes before the announcement. But it never came. Instead, on the morning of May 22nd, President Alassane Ouattara appeared in a suit, flanked by his ministers, calmly presiding over a cabinet meeting. Photos were released, statements were issued. Reuters, BBC, and other major networks all confirmed there was no coup. But here is what really matters. It didn't take a coup to cause this much chaos, just the fear of one. And that fear was real, it was raw, it was explosive. Because when a population expects betrayal, a rumor becomes a trigger, not a surprise. Officials blame misinformation. Journalists blame Telegram channels. But the truth? The system itself, the uncertainty, the silence, the mistrust, fed the flame. This wasn't just a rumor gone viral. It was a stress test, and the country failed. So if the coup never happened, the next question is even more important. Why did so many people believe that a coup could happen? If politics in Côte d'Ivoire was a game of chess, Tidjane Thiam was the surprise piece. The one no one expected to return, but everyone fears could take the crown. An international technocrat, former CEO of Credit Suisse, the man once tipped to become France's finance minister until he shocked everyone by turning his gaze back home. In 2023, he was elected president of the Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire, the country's oldest political party and former ruling force. His return lit a fire under opposition hopes. Polls began to shift. Youth groups rallied. Diaspora Ivorians saw a potential unifier, a man with global experience and clean hands, untouched by the bloody rivalries of Ouattara and Gbagbo. But the establishment saw something else, a threat. In March 2025, Tidjane Thiam formally renounced his French citizenship, clearing what many thought was his final legal hurdle. But it wasn't enough. In May, the Ivorian Electoral Commission barred him from running, citing a 1961 law that stripped Ivorians of citizenship if they acquire another nationality without state approval, even if it happened decades ago. Thiam's legal team called it politically motivated technicality. The PDCI called it electoral sabotage, and Thiam himself, he called it a betrayal of democracy. According to a report by Al Jazeera, his party is now appealing the decision, vowing to fight it in court and on the street if necessary. But even if the ban is overturned, the damage may already be done. The ruling had galvanized the opposition and deepened public mistrust in the electoral system. Meanwhile, the Ouattara camp remains silent on whether the president will run again, a silence that only heightens the tension. So ask yourself, was the coup rumor just smoke or a signal that the political forest is dry and it only takes one spark? He's been in power since 2011, a decade of economic growth, 2 controversial elections, 1 civil war. Now, as the 2025 presidential race approaches, the question everyone is asking in Côte d'Ivoire is simple. Is Alassane Ouattara running again? The president hasn't said yes, but he hasn't said no either. And in Ivorian politics, silence can speak volume. Let's rewind back a bit. In 2020, Ouattara pledged to step down, even nominated a successor, Prime Minister Amadou Coulibaly. But when Coulibaly died suddenly, Ouattara reversed course, citing exceptional circumstances. A newly revised constitution gave him legal grounds to seek a 3rd term, a move that triggered protests, clashes, and left over 80 people dead during the election season. Ouattara won the election, but the legitimacy of his mandate remains under scrutiny. Now, 5 years later, with anti-imperialist sentiment sweeping across West Africa, Ouattara's alliances have drawn even more criticism. He is widely seen as one of French and America's most loyal allies in the region, a role many Ivorians now interpret as puppet leadership, especially as countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger reject foreign domination and form the Alliance of Sahel States. In March 2025, Côte d'Ivoire hosted U.S. AFRICOM Commander General Michael Langley during Flintlock 2025, a major U.S. military exercise aimed at bolstering regional defense and countering extremist threats, but also, critics argue, isolating the Sahel revolutionary government. Talks were held about expanding U.S. drones operations near the Sahel border, and Côte d'Ivoire continues to serve as a logistical foothold for France, even as French troops are expelled from neighboring countries. To many, this reinforces the perception of Ouattara as a foreign gatekeeper, not a national leader, especially in an era when sovereignty is being redefined. So while some in the ruling RHDP party frame him as the only guarantor of stability, others see a man out of sync with the continent's changing pulse. As one student activist told Reuters, "You can't build democracy on concrete alone. We want fresh air, not recycled power, not imported control." If President Alassane Ouattara is seen by many Ivorians as Western puppet in Abidjan, then Laurent Gbagbo represents everything the people believe Ouattara is not. In 2011, following a disputed presidential election, Gbagbo refused to concede defeat. What followed was 5 months of violent standoff, ending when French and UN troops launched airstrikes on his compound, arrested him, and handed the presidency to Alassane Ouattara. That moment cemented a narrative that has never faded. Ouattara was installed by French powers, while Gbagbo was taken down by them. Today, as anti-French and anti-imperialist sentiment sweeps across West Africa, from Mali to Burkina Faso, Gbagbo's political return has reignited old loyalties. To his supporters, he's not just a politician, he's a symbol of resistance to foreign domination. After his ICC acquittal and return from The Hague in 2021, Gbagbo formed a new party, the African People's Party, Côte d'Ivoire, and though barred from running in 2025 due to a past conviction, his influence is growing. He has aligned himself with the rising anti-French mood and remains outspoken against Western military influence in West Africa. While Ouattara hosted General Michael Langley and facilitated US drone operations aimed at monitoring Sahel revolutionaries, Gbagbo calls for a reorientation of sovereignty, a break from dependency. So now, Ivorians are not just choosing between politicians, they are choosing between two visions of the nation's future. One tied to Paris and Washington, the other tied to history, resistance, and the promise of reclaiming Africa for Africans. On the surface, Ivory Coast boasts one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, a projected 6.3% GDP growth in 2025 according to the IMF. But beneath that glowing headline lies a growing crisis, because for the average Ivorian, this growth isn't being felt. In the rural north and west, cocoa and cashew farmers are struggling to survive. The country remains the world's largest cocoa producer, but yields have been falling, threatened by climate change and aging plantations and disease. In March, Reuters reported that the government plans to cut cocoa exports to stabilize prices. But for small-scale farmers, it means one thing: lower income, higher uncertainty. Meanwhile, cashew production hit a record 1.3 million metric tons, but a crash in demand from Vietnam and falling global prices have left over 200,000 tons unsold. Farmers are watching their harvest rot with no buyers in sight. Add that to the looming threat of US tariff on Ivorian exports, a suspension that could be lifted at any moment, and you have an economy that looks stable from abroad, but it cracked at the foundation. This economic anxiety is fueling political tension. When people can't feed their families, they start asking hard questions about leadership, foreign deals, and who's really benefiting from all the trade agreements signed in air-conditioned boardrooms in Abidjan. Behind the highways and bridges, there is a storm brewing, not just in votes, but in bread and bitterness. And that storm might just reshape the country faster than any politician can prepare for. Across West Africa, the ground is shifting, not with elections, but with boots. In just 3 years, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have all undergone military coups. But unlike past juntas, these weren't apologetic takeovers. They were ideological rejections of France, of Western dependency, and of post-colonial order that many believe has failed the continent. Together, these countries have formed the Alliance of Sahel States, an anti-French bloc pledging sovereignty, solidarity, and a new African-led vision for security and governance. They've cut ties with ECOWAS, they've expelled French troops, they've embraced Pan-African rhetoric, and increasingly Russian support. And their message is echoing south. Côte d'Ivoire shares border with 2 AES members, Mali and Burkina Faso. While the Ivorian government brands itself as a democratic stronghold, public sentiment tells a different story. Many Ivorians, especially the youth, are watching the Sahel closely, not with fear, but with fascination. They see leaders like Assimi Goïta and Ibrahim Traoré defying the West, reclaiming resources, and speaking the language of dignity. In contrast, Ouattara's hosting of General Langley, an American drone strategy, feels like submission. According to the African Center for Strategic Studies, trust in democratic institutions and ECOWAS has collapsed in West Africa, and Côte d'Ivoire is beginning to feel the spillover. That's why the coup rumors in May traveled so far, so fast. It wasn't just a lie, it was a possibility many had already imagined. In a region rewriting its destiny, even a whisper can turn into wildfire. October 2025 is not just an election, it's a test of memory, of power, and of whether Côte d'Ivoire can finally break free from its circle of crisis. On paper, it's a chance for renewal, a moment for Ivorians to decide who will lead them through a region in flux. But on the ground, uncertainty hangs like smoke in the air. One of the most popular opposition figures, Tidjane, has been barred from running. Former President Laurent Gbagbo, still politically active, is legally disqualified. President Ouattara remains silent on his intentions, but his party is preparing for a possible fourth-term bid. The electoral field is shrinking, while tensions are rising. According to a 2024 Afrobarometer report, public trust in Côte d'Ivoire's Electoral Commission has dropped below 40%, and only a minority of youth believe elections can bring real change. In the north and west, voter registration is lagging, while urban centers simmer with frustration. And all of this is unfolding in a regional climate where popular uprisings and military takeovers are redefining power, not the ballots. If the 2025 vote is seen as unfair, rigged, or foreign influence, Côte d'Ivoire risks tipping back towards the instability of 2010, a conflict that left over 3,000 people dead and tore the country in two. But if it managed with transparency, inclusion, and restraint, this election could mark a break from the past and a turning point for democratic renewal. That's the gamble, a choice between continuity and collapse, between silence and accountability, between repeating the past or finally closing the chapter. AFRICOM stands at the edge of something. It's not just another election season, it's a reckoning. With its past, with its present, and the forces pulling at its future from all directions. On one hand, there's President Alassane Ouattara, seen by many as a pillar of stability and international cooperation. Backed by powerful allies in Paris and Washington, Ouattara has aligned Côte d'Ivoire with Western security strategies. He has hosted high-profile figures like U.S. AFRICOM General Michael Langley and opened the country to foreign drone operations targeting the Sahel region. To his supporters, this is strategic leadership. To his critics, it's submission, a presidency no longer rooted in national will but in foreign agendas. On the other hand stands Laurent Gbagbo, ousted in 2011 with French military support. Gbagbo has returned as a symbol of defiance. He channels the rising anti-imperialist energy sweeping West Africa, an energy that overthrew governments in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Though legally barred from running, Gbagbo's voice has reignited old loyalties and new demands for sovereignty, self-determination, and a decisive break from France's lingering grip. Meanwhile, Tidjane, the one man who might have breached these opposing visions, has been blocked from contesting. The field narrows. The people grow frustrated. In this moment, Ivorians aren't just choosing a president, they are choosing a direction. Will the nation continue to serve as Western bulwark in a region rejecting foreign interference, or will it embrace the wave of Pan-Africanism now redrawing the political map? Because one thing is clear, the days of quiet obedience are over. This election will either reinforce the status quo or shatter it. This is Frontline Africa, and in this special episode, we've unpacked the whispers, the power plays, and the stakes no one else will name. If you found this valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. I am Ezekiel Enejeta. See you in the next one.